Rav Dov Tzvi Kreiswirth was born in Eretz Yisrael in 1944 to Rav Chaim and Rebbetzin Sarah Kreiswirth, the daughter of the Menal Ruchni of the Slobodki Yeshiva, the Toras Avram, Reb Avram Gurdzinski. In 1947, Rav Chaim Kreiswirth was appointed the Rosh HaYeshiva of Beis Medrash LaTorah and moved with his family to Chicago. In 1953, Rav Dov's family moved to Antwerp, where Rav Chaim became the Rav and Av Beis Din of Antwerp, Belgium. At the tender age of 11, this young American boy was sent by his father to learn at Tiferes Tzion under Rav Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz in Bnei Brak, which at the time was farmlands, a far stretch from the American life he was used to. During this time, Rav Dov lived at the home of Rav Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal, cementing a warm relationship with Rav Chaim and the Stipler, a relationship that made a lifelong impact on Rav Dov. After Rav Dov's bar mitzvah in Antwerp, he went to learn in the Gateshead Yeshiva. At age 15, Rav Dov returned to Eretz Yisrael, learning first by Rav Moshe Shmuel Shapiro, moving on to learn by Rav Shmuel Rozovsky in Panovich and Rav Beryl Soloveitchik in Brisk. After his time in Eretz Yisrael, Rav Dov moved to the United States, first learning by Rav Hutner and Rav Paller, eventually marrying Leah Leifer, the daughter of the Pittsburgher Rebbe, and settling in Lakewood for the last 50 years of his life. Rav Dov and his Rebbetzin built a home on Torah and Chesed, the Rebbetzin standing behind all of her husband's endeavors, backing his growth in Limud HaTorah and Chesed, emulating the great approach of his father, Rav Chaim Zichrono Livracha. With the establishment of Yeshiva Toras Chaim, the Rebbetzin filled the role of Aim HaYeshiva, caring for each and every one of the Bachrim with love and care, creating an environment where every Bacher feels a sense of home and belonging. Rav Dov left an indelible impression on all who knew him, and his impact on the yeshiva, his Rebbeim, his Bachrim and family, and Lakewood community is everlasting.
Rav Dov, the HaYeshiva Zichrono Livracha, was an amazing person. He was a Emistig Groiser Rosh HaYeshiva, even though when you sat with him, you felt that you're speaking to Chave. His anivis, his shiftless was in such a Groiser Madrega.
He's a multifaceted personality, based on his rich yichus of where he came from, what he had seen in his lifetime, and that richness is what he was able to give over. Anyone that would meet him, the passion he had for mitzvahs, for Torah, for Leimdei Torah.
It was a special experience to watch him in that Zehiris and the Chavivas HaMitzvahs that he had. He had, in the same breath, the Varmkeit and the warmth from the Polish Chassidische side from the family, from Reb Chaim and from the Pittsburgher Shver, and in the same breath, the Zehiris and mitzvahs that he had was something that licked in his bones.
He was a world of Europe, a world of Torah, a world of Chesed. Anybody that he was around was always mechabed him tremendously because of his galus and Torah and Chesed and where he came from and who he was.
He was very honest and he was very ehrlich. Everything had to be done with halacha. He was a very straight person.
He learned the sugya with such an emes that there was no stone left unturned. Everything had to be understood to the oimek sugya at the end of the day, 100%.
His davening was palpable. You could see the Rebbeinu Shalom in front of him.
It left such an everlasting rosham on me, the emunah and the chizik and tefillah, and not getting overwhelmed with the bilbul of everything going on and keeping focus on who's running the world and who's in charge. And seeing that by him on a day-to-day basis was always something very special.
It's amazing that you had a Rosh HaYeshiva who learned by Gedolei Olam. But his life was his father. His life was his father. Anything you asked him was always, my father would say like this, and my father would say like that.
His father was a huge personality and a giant in learning and a big Baal Chesed. And his father, he had a presence, and it had tremendous influence on him.
Being the son of his father, he understood that it was Pashat, that Torah with Chesed go hand in hand. And he, together with a few other Yungalites, built what they call today Karen Chesed, Kimche de Pischa. He opened up a Gemach. He started Koil Erevs, he had Koil Shishis, he had Koil Shabbosim.
Whatever program or project he had ultimately was another way to make it better and easier for people to live. It wasn't specifically Leibenstein Torah, but he definitely was interested in seeing to it that the Leibenstein Torah can continue as long as possible.
His mind was always not on himself. He was always thinking about what's kind of Tanfat. That was, you saw it when you dealt with him.
50 years of giving and giving and giving. This was whole life. His life was Torah and Chesed.
It wasn't a project for him. It was his Metzias, and together with his Shultif, his Rebbetzin, the home was just a home of complete selflessness to do for others.
Moshe and Shriga raised a home of children who are Leibenstein Torah, who are Yirei Shemayim, who have families of their own. There was so much that we learned from them.
Besides everything else that he was doing here in Lakewood, Reb Dave has a yeshiva that he started in Eretz Yisrael, and he installed his nephew as the Rosh Yeshiva, but he was officially Rosh Yeshiva, so he would go there a few times a year. He said shiurim for them, he said shmuzim for them, he would try to be there whenever he can, Yom Neiram and Yom Tovim.
The yeshiva was involved in every detail in setting up the yeshiva, in choosing the staff for the yeshiva, and in the first few years knew every single bocha in yeshiva, what was happening with the bocha, where he was holding in Ruchnias, in Gashmias.
When he came, you could see that he was in his natural habitat, being in yeshiva, being in Eretz Yisrael, being where he always wanted to be.
When the Rosh Yeshiva came, the Bacham would go out to greet him. They would sing, they would dance. It was a yontif in yeshiva when he was there.
The experiences that he was able to have with the Talmidim, traveling with them to Mezhbish, or spending Shabbosim with them, that was a highlight for the Talmidim, and that was the highlight for the Rosh Yeshiva. That's what had given him the greatest chiyas, the greatest nachas.
He was building us up as human beings, as people, as mentioned, to be good husbands, good fathers, to raise our own good children. The steiging from the Talmidim in Yeshiva was his mamish's life.
The joy he had seeing the Hatzlacha, and the way he davened for his Talmidim, the way he cared for his Talmidim, the way he had inquired one about the other. You knew that he was someone that Yom V'Layla, the Talmidim were on his mind and were in his heart.
His greatest love was his Bachram, and his Bachram were his oxygen. And that really was what carried him through every single day.
I never saw him for a minute being Messiah Das on his Talmidim. In the hardest times to Nebuch, when he went through his Shver Tkufis, or when he came back, or when he's recuperating in the hospital, you saw him there. If you just mention the word about his Talmidim, his yeshiva, his Ramim, he forgot where he is, he forgot all his Yesirim.
That's what the Yeshiva lived for. It's Talmidim, Talmidim. This is what kept him going.
His care and concern for a Talmud went way beyond the years that the Talmud spent in yeshiva. It was about, once the Talmud was a Talmud in his yeshiva, he became a Talmud wherever he went on to.
Shaloi kederech hateva, would you bachim there the Shaloi kederech hateva? The Boitshlim gave a special siyata d'shmaya, and you were zoich in it. Don't lose it.
Yeshiva Toras Chaim was started with a great vision by the Rosh Yeshiva, and it had blossomed and turned into a yeshiva of true godless.
All Torah world is having such a nachas from Toras Chaim Bachram wherever they go. That's in his chus, in the koiches that he put in.
Baruch Hashem, through the help of Reb Shlomo Brunner, a dear friend of the yeshiva. The yeshiva was zecher to acquire a piece of property in Yerushalayim Kodesh. We ask you, the Toras Chaim family, to help fulfill the dream of the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal and build on his legacy.